A manipulative person has a way of making you feel like you're in control while slowly taking that control away from you. It starts subtly. Maybe they shower you with attention, praise, or affection, making you feel like you finally found someone who understands you. They listen intently, nodding at all the right moments, making you feel heard, seen, and valued. It feels incredible. You think, wow, this person really gets me. But what's actually happening is far more calculated than it seems. Slowly, they begin to introduce small shifts in the way you think and feel. At first, they might make offhand comments that seem harmless. Maybe they jokingly criticize your choices, your appearance, or even the way you express yourself. They do it in a way that seems lighthearted, so you brush it off. But over time, you notice yourself second-guessing things you never questioned before. You hesitate before wearing something you once loved, worried about what they might say. You start phrasing your words carefully, hoping to avoid their disapproval. They create an emotional roller coaster, keeping you on edge. One moment, they're warm, affectionate, and supportive, making you feel like you're on top of the world. The next, they withdraw, become distant, or give you subtle signs that something is wrong, but they refuse to tell you what. You find yourself desperate to get back to the version of them that made you feel so good. And that's exactly the point. They're training you to seek their approval, making you work harder and harder for the moments of affection they give sparingly. When you start expressing discomfort or noticing red flags, they twist things around to make you feel like the unreasonable one. If you tell them something they did hurt you, they dismiss it. They tell you you're too sensitive or overreacting. They may even turn it back on you, making you feel guilty for even bringing it up. The more you argue your point, the more exhausted you become, until eventually you start questioning yourself. Maybe they're right. Maybe you're being dramatic. Maybe you're the problem. They use guilt as a weapon, making you feel like you owe them something. If they do something nice for you, they bring it up later when you try to set a boundary. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. They make you feel like saying no is a betrayal, like setting limits is unfair to them. Before you know it, you're agreeing to things you don't want to do just to keep the peace. They play the victim when it benefits them. If they make a mistake, they don't take responsibility. Instead, they spin a story about how hard their life has been, how no one understands them, how they've been hurt before. Suddenly, you find yourself comforting them, even when you were the one hurt by their actions. They turn your valid concerns into an attack against them, making you feel guilty for even bringing them up. They use your own emotions against you. If they know you value kindness, they accuse you of being unkind when you stand up for yourself. If they know you hate conflict, they create situations that push you into uncomfortable confrontations. They study you, learning exactly what makes you tick, and then use that knowledge to manipulate you in ways that are almost impossible to recognize at first. The confusion starts to take a toll. You begin questioning yourself constantly. You replay conversations in your head, wondering if you were too harsh, too emotional, too needy. You start feeling like you're walking on eggshells, never sure which version of them you're going to get. The emotional whiplash keeps you trapped, hoping each time that the loving, kind version of them is the real one. But deep down, a part of you knows something is off. A person who never takes responsibility for their actions has mastered the art of deflection. Every mistake, every wrong move, every hurtful word, none of it is ever their fault. At first, it might seem like bad luck or unfortunate circumstances. Maybe they tell stories about how people have always misunderstood them, how the world has been unfair, how they've had to fight against constant injustice. They paint themselves as a victim, someone who has been wronged time and time again. And because you're a compassionate person, you listen, you believe them, you sympathize with their struggles. But over time, a pattern begins to emerge. No matter what happens, they never admit fault. If they say something cruel, it's because you provoked them. If they forget something important, it's because you didn't remind them properly. If they betray your trust, it's because you weren't meeting their needs. No matter what goes wrong, somehow it always comes back to you. They use excuses to justify their behavior, making it seem as if they had no other choice. Maybe they were just too stressed, too tired, too overwhelmed. They had a rough childhood, a terrible ex, an impossible boss. Anything that shifts the blame away from them and onto something or someone else, they convince you that if their circumstances were different, they would be better. And so you start making excuses for them too. You tell yourself that they didn't mean to hurt you, that they're just going through a hard time, that if you're patient enough, things will change. They twist reality in a way that makes you question your own perception. If you bring up something they did, they rewrite the story. Maybe you remember them yelling at you during an argument, but they insist they were completely calm, that you were the one who overreacted. Maybe you recall them breaking a promise, but they tell you they never actually made that promise in the first place. Slowly, they chip away at your confidence in your own memory, making you doubt what you know to be true. When confronted, they don't just deny wrongdoing, they turn the table. Suddenly, the conversation shifts, and instead of addressing their actions, you find yourself defending your reactions. Maybe you bring up something hurtful they said, but rather than acknowledge it, they accuse you of being too sensitive. Maybe you express disappointment over something they did, but instead of apologizing, they start listing all the ways you have disappointed them. Before you know it, you're apologizing for things you didn't even do just to smooth things over. They seek sympathy instead of accountability. The moment they sense they might actually have to own up to something, they find a way to make you feel bad for them. They bring up their past struggles, their emotional wounds, the ways life has been unfair to them. If they cheated, it's because they never felt loved enough. If they lied, it's because they were afraid of how you'd react. If they were cruel, it's because they were hurting. And because you care about them, you soften. You shift from feeling hurt to feeling sorry for them. You let go of your anger and they walk away without ever taking responsibility. They thrive in chaos because it keeps them from being held accountable. When things get tense, they create distractions. They might start an unrelated argument, bring up something from the past, or suddenly become emotional in a way that forces you to comfort them instead of confronting them. They keep you so busy managing their emotions that you don't have time to process your own. They refuse to change because, in their mind, they don't need to. If they never acknowledge their flaws, they never have to fix them. Instead, they expect you to adjust, to be more understanding, more forgiving, more willing to accommodate their behavior. And without even realizing it, you do. You start taking on the responsibility they refuse to carry. You find yourself apologizing just to keep the peace, explaining things they should already understand, and making sacrifices to prevent future conflicts. And all the while, they continue on, untouched by the weight of their own actions. A person who is truly dangerous doesn't always show their true nature right away. Instead, they master the art of wearing a mask, presenting themselves as kind, charming, and even generous when they are in public. They know exactly how to behave to gain admiration, how to say the right things to be seen as a good person, and how to make others believe they are someone worth trusting. They might be the type who helps strangers, cracks jokes that make everyone laugh, and offers support to people who seem to need it. They could be the person who always volunteers to help, the one others describe as such a great guy or an amazing woman. On the surface, they appear warm, friendly, and even inspiring, but behind closed doors, when no one else is watching, they become someone entirely different. At home, in private, or in relationships where they have control, their true personality starts to emerge. The warmth disappears, replaced by coldness, criticism, or outright cruelty. The same person who was making people feel special and valued in public suddenly becomes dismissive, impatient, or even emotionally abusive in private. They might mock you, belittle you, or act as if your feelings don't matter. The kindness they showed so effortlessly to others vanishes when you need it most. They know how to keep up appearances. When something happens that could expose them, they are quick to cover it up. If they say something cruel, they will tell you they were just joking. If they lash out in anger, they will insist they were just stressed. If they get caught lying, they will twist the story so that it seems like you misunderstood. They are experts at making sure that no one outside of your relationship ever sees what they are really like. This kind of person thrives on the praise and admiration of others. They want to be seen as the perfect partner, the ideal friend, the person who has everything together. They will go out of their way to make sure others think highly of them, even if it means faking emotions they don't actually feel. They might post loving messages about you on social media while treating you with indifference in real life. They might go out of their way to do favors for strangers while ignoring your needs completely. They want the world to see them as a good person, but they don't care about actually being one. When you try to bring up their behavior, they will turn it around on you. If you say they treat you differently in private, they will make you feel like you're imagining things. They might even point to how other people see them as proof that you're wrong. Everyone else thinks I'm a great person. Maybe the problem isn't me, maybe it's you. They make you doubt your own reality, forcing you to question whether what you're experiencing is really as bad as it feels. Because they are so skilled at maintaining their image, it becomes difficult for others to believe you if you ever try to speak up. If you tell someone about the way they treat you, they might not believe you because the person they know seems so different. They might even defend them, telling you that you must be mistaken because they would never do that. This only isolates you further, making you feel like no one will ever understand what you're going through. They thrive on this duality. It gives them power, knowing that they can be adored by the outside world while controlling and hurting you in private. They get to enjoy the benefits of being seen as a good person while never having to actually be one. And the more they get away with it, the more confident they become in their ability to manipulate people. The person they show to the world is a carefully crafted illusion. They know exactly how to turn on the charm when it benefits them, how to make people like them, how to present themselves as someone they are not. But when the doors are closed, when no one else is around, the act drops. And the real version of them, the one only a few people ever get to see, is something entirely different. Being around someone who drains your energy is like carrying an invisible weight that gets heavier over time. At first, you might not even notice it. Maybe they come across as intense, passionate, or deeply emotional. They might tell you how much they need you, how no one else understands them the way you do. It feels good to be that person for them, to be someone they trust and rely on. You listen to their problems, offer support, and try to be there for them whenever they need you. But slowly, something shifts. You start to realize that no matter how much you give, it's never enough. They always need more. More of your time, more of your attention, more of your emotional energy. Every conversation revolves around them. If they're upset, you're expected to drop everything to comfort them. If they're struggling, your problems suddenly don't matter. They pull you into their emotional storms, making you responsible for their moods, their happiness, and even their sense of self-worth. Being around them becomes exhausting. You never know what version of them you're going to get. Some days they're charming, loving, and make you feel like the most important person in their world. Other days they're distant, moody, or even cruel. And because they've given you glimpses of their good side, you keep holding on to the hope that the loving version of them will stay. You work harder to keep them happy, to avoid upsetting them, to do whatever it takes to make things feel okay again. But no matter what you do, it never lasts. They create an emotional imbalance where they are always the priority and you are always the afterthought. If you try to express your own feelings or needs, they either dismiss them or find a way to turn the conversation back to themselves. If you're upset, somehow they manage to make it about how your emotions are affecting them. If you try to set a boundary, they react as if you're being selfish or unreasonable. Over time, you learn to suppress your own needs just to keep the peace. They thrive on your exhaustion because it keeps you from seeing things clearly. When you're constantly drained, you don't have the energy to question their behavior. You don't have the strength to argue or push back. You just go along with whatever they want because it's easier than dealing with the fallout. They keep you in a constant state of emotional depletion so that you're too worn out to see the damage they're doing. The worst part is that this cycle isn't always obvious. They might not yell or be openly cruel. Instead, they drain you in ways that are harder to recognize. Maybe they guilt trip you into doing things you don't want to do. Maybe they subtly criticize you so that you're always trying to prove yourself to them. Maybe they make you feel like you owe them something, even when you've already given them so much. They find ways to keep you emotionally hooked, ensuring that you stay invested even when you're suffering. You might start noticing physical signs of exhaustion, trouble sleeping, constant anxiety, feeling on edge even when they're not around. Your mind is always racing, replaying conversations, trying to figure out how to make things better. You start losing interest in things you once loved because all your energy is being drained by this one person. The joy, the peace, the sense of self you once had slowly fades, replaced by a constant feeling of heaviness. The people around you might start to notice the change. Maybe they tell you that you don't seem like yourself anymore. Maybe they point out how much this person takes from you without giving anything back. But by the time you realize what's happening, you're already deep in the cycle. You've invested so much of yourself that walking away feels impossible. You tell yourself that if you just try harder, if you just love them more, if you just figure out the right thing to say, things will get better. But they don't. And with each passing day, you feel yourself slipping further away from the person you used to be.